In this episode, we're diving into a topic that's everywhere right now: artificial intelligence. We will discuss how is AI used in classrooms and how is it used in homes. How can it help support your child's learning, and how as parents can you use it safely and responsibly. We'll unpack the potential benefits, common misconceptions, and how to talk to children about what's real, what's fake, and how to think critically in a world with AI. So, hi, Jason.
Hi, how you doing, Lee?
Good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, good, all good.
Good. And how are you, Lisa?
Really nervous about this podcast because I'm I feel very nervous about AI in general, but we'll get into that, I suppose. So yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm all right.
Okay. And I think it's fair enough to be nervous. And I think a lot of parents are nervous about AI. It's an ever developing, ever growing phenomenon that we need to keep developing with. So I suppose it
I agree.
brings me into how is it relevant to education? How's it being used at home, at school? What's it all about?
Well, it's been used a lot in lots of parts of life now, isn't it? It's becoming increasingly important. So the thing that got me thinking about this as an idea for a podcast is because I've seen it more and more, and I've started using it more and more in my work and when supporting families or thinking about situations that children might be struggling with, where even if I'm thinking, not sure what I'd say here or not quite sure how to word that, I found it quite surprisingly helpful. I thought, you know what, there might be some things we can learn here. There might be a few gems that we can share with other parents. Um, I'm lucky that I also work at a university, see, and next to me in my office there's a guy that uses a lot of AI and is quite into that kind of thing and understands it really very well. So I've learned lots from him. And so that's where I've become better at using it myself, become less fearful, I suppose, from a work point of view, and then also in other parts of life, like some of the advice work that I've done through Adoption Focus. I don't use it a great deal with that, but there have been a few cases where I found it really helpful. So that's where it comes from. But AI is basically artificial intelligence. Everyone knows that, I'm sure, and most people have got it on their phones, especially if they've got Androids. They'll probably have like a Gemini thing, and if they've got the latest iPhone, it'll have that linked in already with its built-in artificial intelligence. You're seeing it just immersed into things already. Even on email apps now, half the time it's got a often it's a little star symbol pops up that says, AI can help you write this. You can't escape it sometimes. And it's basically knowing what it can do, what it can't do. I suppose that's the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But most of it's based on what they call large language models. So they've been fed loads of information, tons and tons of information from websites, books, magazines, anything that's been published, and they use that to generate new content. That's the thing that's a bit different to what perhaps Google has done in the past, which is just search information that's out there and tell you where it is, whereas the AI can read and interpret information and present it to you in a new form that perhaps hasn't been considered before in a quite a human-like way, which is where it can feel a bit scary because you think, crikey, is this? It almost can, when the way it uses its language can be very friendly sounding. It can be quite chatty. It can be very similar to a real person, which is where
Right.
it can feel a bit like weird and a bit scary at times. But it's still not a real person.
I think I was thinking that when you were saying, like, sometimes in emails you can have, like, I can help you write this.
Yeah.
How do I know whether that email that I've received has come from a person or has actually been generated by AI? Now, I assume that
Yeah.
a person's asked them to it to generate it
Mm.
for me, but it is that it is so good nowadays that you won't know whether someone has actually typed out every single word or whether they've
Mm.
put the gist of it and it's been restructured and kind of presented by AI.
Yeah.
And I know that's very helpful for the person writing the email if they're struggling to word something, but it also makes me a bit anxious that I don't know I don't know where this email's come from or who's crafted it. So yeah.
Yeah. There are some giveaways, and that's perhaps what we can talk about as well. Is it's again from the university work, I sometimes have to mark assignments that students do, and we're very careful about what the guidance we give them in terms of how they can use AI or not, and the kind of things that to help us to see. Sometimes it's very obvious, and with an email, for example, especially if you know that person,
Yeah.
then you'll kind of know the style. If it suddenly reads differently, radically different, and the kind of word choice is a bit different, you think this doesn't sound like you. What's going on? You know, if it feels like someone else has written it, it literally is. The AI is behaving like another person has written it for you in a sense. So, and often because they're generally American based, you find a lot of Americanisms in the way that they construct the language as well.
Right.
So that can be a bit of a giveaway, but it can help. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
you know, it can be helpful, but yeah, you gotta be
I'm
careful.
willing to be swayed here. I'm willing to be swayed. I don't mean to be a negative Nancy on this. And
No, not at all.
actually, whilst listening to you say that, um, I'm also thinking to myself, okay, so within schools, how might it be being used? Well, you've spoken there about your university students, but school students, they could be doing research and they could be using AI to kind of help them with their research. So that would be one way in which kind of like that could be used, but also teachers could possibly be using it to communicate or to perhaps plan things out or to draft things for lessons. So it could actually make a lot of people's work a lot easier as well. And I can't let my anxieties stop that. It could kind of cloud my judgment about the progress that it allows us to have. So
yeah, there are some great and increasingly new and that thing's growing all the time. But there are some great apps out there for teachers to use as well that help them with planning and resourcing. And again, it's never perfect. It can't think for you, but it can save you some time. It can give you a sort of, if you've got nothing, it can give you something, and then you can work with that something and make it better. But if you start from scratch all the time, it can take hours. It can be laborious, and if your brain's not as fresh as you want it to be, it can, what you end up with at the end isn't that great. But the AI can actually get you to where you want to be a little bit quicker, and then you can take that thing and apply your own personal touch to it and edit it and whatever. But
and I
it's
was
easy
also
to do that.
I was also just thinking then, like, possibly it might enable schools to give better, more in-depth and more detailed reports about
Yes.
students as well. So, I remember they are laborious things to write. You want to write them well, you want to pass on the information, but when you've got lots and lots and lots of them to do, that can be really, really hard. But, if AI is used to help that process, but then it's revisited as it's a starting point. AI will provide you with the starting point, and then the human goes back and actually kind of make sure that it's okay, that it's relevant, that it's accurate, and kind of provides the additional bits of information. Then actually, parents could be getting a lot more information about their child and their progress, couldn't they?
They could, yeah, absolutely. Because and I'm thinking that in the school, I mean, the children perhaps using it less than they maybe in the future. They might be using it a bit more. I suppose mostly as they're older, it's going to be more relevant, isn't it? Secondary schools probably more, maybe some Key Stage 2, because you can use things like Duolingo. You can use Grammarly, which is good for spell. I mean, Grammarly's been around for years, but it's now become like an AI rather than just a simple check device, and it's quite good for that kind of work. You might argue that's going to take away this incentive to actually understand the grammar, but for children with dyslexia and other significant barriers, actually you will need something like that, and you're going to need to learn how to use these tools, because as an adult later on, you're going to have to know how to support yourself to be able to function in the great world out there, as an independent adult. So actually learning some of these skills can be something that's valuable in other ways.
And also, I can remember being a maths teacher, I'd always be kind of saying to kids that we had to work this out and work that out, and they would just say, "Well, why? We have a phone in our pocket, and that has got a calculator on it." And it was really hard to argue with that, because in their future they would be going everywhere with a calculator. Yes, they need to know what to put into it, but that is what they'd have to do. And I suppose when you say, are we perhaps lessening the incentive to learn the grammar, but actually our children are going to be walking around in their futures with very powerful computers in their pocket. They already are, but even more powerful computers in their pockets, which will allow them to have access to this at all times, really. So, it is hard when we perhaps think that we're what's the word I'm looking for? We're making things easier, or it's not as rigorous, or it's not as thorough. But we're also do need to be getting them ready to live in the world they're going to be living in, which is going to have that power in their pocket all the time.
Yeah, but they still need that. If they can, they need that understanding, don't they? So if you're using a calculator, if you've got no rough idea of what kind of size number you're expecting to see, then you're not going to be able to question what comes out. If you accidentally type something wrong, you're going to believe exactly what it says, and so that critical thinking is still massively important.
I was going to say critical thinking skills
Mm.
alongside the use of technology is.
Yeah, and that's where we all have to help with that, schools and parents, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I think Translate is really helpful for children with additional language. That could be really helpful, like Duolingo and even Google Translate. There's lots of devices that help. I know sometimes children arrive from overseas and that word of English, and the teacher doesn't know that particular language, and they're trying to communicate very simple things like when to say toilet or whatever. There's things you need to know, and it can really help you because it'll speak those words out for you as well. At least the child might have you begin to get some form of communication going. So it has those sort of simple applications too. There's some really clever things where it can immerse them into learning, VR kind of stuff, virtual reality stuff where they can actually go and visit, in inverted commas, like the Colosseum or something and explore it. So that's probably not really AI as such, but it all kind of starts getting linked together.
It's huge, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. And I think we've started to touch on this, but I suppose just to be really specific about it, what common misconceptions do you think there are about AI and using it?
Well, there's quite a few. I suppose one of them might be that it's always perfect and it's correct because it's a computer, but it's not.
No.
They make mistakes. AI gets it wrong. You can ask it questions, ask it to write something, and it still gets things wrong. It makes mistakes, and all kind of reasons for that. But it's just because it's not perfect. And
well, I can remember when Wikipedia was kind of, and possibly still now. I've not used it for ages, but there would be people who would go in and enter deliberately incorrect information into Wikipedia so that the people who were using Wikipedia as a reference would get the wrong information. And your AI is working off the information that it's had given to it. And so that incorrect information could have been given accidentally. It could be given deliberately if people want to actually kind of like undermine it. And then you've also got, because it's not a human, it's not providing that critical thinking around the outside. So it might have just linked together things that shouldn't have been linked. So, I think we have to remember that it's not going to be perfect and we can't trust it 100%.
No. And again, that comes back to that thing you said before, like critical thinking, isn't it? Just always keep your brain switched on, as well as use the AI, recognize what it can do. Another misconception often is that it's going to replace people, but I don't think it can. Certainly not in education and working with children, because we all know that the connections and relationships are absolutely critical. It can be biased as well, because some people think it's going to be neutral and impartial. Unfortunately, because it's fed with whatever information it's given, and that's what it's going to base its conclusions or its thinking, in inverted commas, thinking. So if it's fed mostly stuff from the United States, let's say, then that's going to have that perspective all the time from a US perspective, maybe not a UK one, or not a Chinese or Australian or any other part of the world that you might be thinking about. So
forgive my ignorance here, but could there also be kind of bias from I don't think the word's corporate, but like whoever's created it. So it might not be a country or a region of the world bias, but it might be a kind of like, I don't know, political leaning or a message that they're trying to get out. Like from the people who developed it, I'm thinking, is that a thing that we need to look at who's developed it, or is that not really?
I don't think that's ever been suggested as actually real, as a real danger. But I guess it's potentially there, but I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of it. I don't think it attempts to, and I think actually if you try and ask it to give opinions, it will come back with you. I'm not, I can't give opinions. I don't hold. So if you ask it to give you an opinion about a political issue, it probably won't. It won't do it. It won't try and say, actually, you should think this. It doesn't. It will say, I'm neutral. I'm a learning machine or whatever. And so it reminds you that it is only a computer. So that's actually quite reassuring, I suppose. It's the same if you try and ask it to do something that's considered, rude, or if you're trying to be aggressive or violent or anything like that, hateful, it won't engage with you, which is quite useful. So sort of safeguard.
It is good to know. I'd never considered trying to do anything like that with AI, but it's good to know. So I hadn't found that out, but it's good to know.
Yeah, so they're quite helpful. And I think something people might be, maybe one misconception might be that it's just you've got to be really tech savvy, otherwise it's not for you. You can't use it. And again, that's not true. And hopefully from today we might see some examples of things that people might find useful if they've not done it before.
Okay, I've got an opinion about AI, and you can tell me whether this is a misconception or whether I'm true.
Okay.
But so I'm not tech savvy. You've kind of busted that myth for me, but I think it's going to be quite time consuming to actually learn how to use it effectively. I don't think I've got time to learn how to use it. Is that valid, or am I?
It depends what you want to use it for. I mean, the probably these things just use it for some simple things, and that's it. Don't worry about overcomplicating it. And then as over time you'll just got to get used to it and see what it can do, and you'll start thinking, actually, I wonder if it can help with this. I wonder if it can help with that, and it might naturally lead you towards more. But I wouldn't necessarily want to sit down and say, right, I'm going to spend an hour and a half just teaching myself AI, because that would just be tedious. No one's going to want to do that. So yeah, I think it's meant to be easy and accessible. So start with something that could save you a bit of time or give you a bit of advice or something like that, and that's where I think it's quite helpful. Where something might be taking ages to do. It could be a good time saver. It could be a bit like if you had a personal assistant with you who knew a lot of stuff about a lot of things and could just help you out. You can treat it a bit like that. So if you think, oh, I could just do with someone to help me with this, and then if that person's not there, the AI can kind of do that for you instead. If that makes any sense. So yeah, it doesn't have to be anything too complicated.
I've always wanted a personal assistant. That'd be great.
Well, that's what they kind of do, especially for people at work. That's what a lot of them are finding it's doing for them. So it makes things a bit more. Well, the idea is it's supposed to make people more productive over time, get more stuff done in the time they've got. But I guess we need to talk about what parents need, don't we?
Yeah.
Rather than worry about what they're doing at work.
So how can parents use AI? I guess broadly to support their child's education, whether it be actual learning or other parts of education. Are there things that parents can use AI for?
Yeah, sure they are. I guess you have to go back to sort of thinking about which tools they might want to use. So the most common one people are familiar with is ChatGPT. It's free, and even though you can pay and have a more upgraded experience, but most people find they're okay with it. But there are other ones like Gemini, which is the Google version. That's really good. I personally find it really helpful. And there's one that I like even more, which is called Claude. That's in CALUDE. No, CLAUDE even. Claude.ai. That's a really good one. It's free, but it's again, this guy that I work with recommended that, and since then I've found that the best of all I've used anyway. So those tools, you can just ask them, type in a question, and it'll give you some sort of answer. And if you don't know what to ask it, you can actually ask it to help you write a prompt, which is even quite funny. So what might a parent want to do? So if let's say they've got homework sent home and they don't quite understand it, you could ask the AI to explain this question to you. Or you could even say, I'm trying to help my child with some homework. He is in year 7 and this is the question he's been asked to do. I don't know how to explain it to him. I've never worked at this, but just literally like that, as if you were talking to a person who is your personal assistant. Type it in like that and see what it comes up with, and it will try and respond to you in a very friendly way, in knowing that you're a parent, not a maths teacher, for example. It might say, "Here, try explaining this. Maybe and it'll give you some steps and suggestions and something that might help you."
So it is useful to just almost chat to it and give them all the information. So, I am a parent, not a teacher.
Yep.
This is how old my child is. And because that will inform how it talks, in inverted commas, back to you, rather than just give them the question, tell them the detail as well.
So it's good to say, I am, and whatever I am, parent of a, if that's where you're coming from. So it already knows. And I find it quite helpful to say which country, and because again, it will know. Because if you just say I'm a parent of a 14-year-old girl, then the AI might start assuming or thinking of you as American potentially, and then coming at you with American-based curriculum stuff, that might not be really relevant to you. So I always think that's one thing I've found better. I am a parent of, I'm in England. And if you say year 7, then it will know that means England because that's the language you use over here. So that's an example. Or if you can, you could take a photo of the homework and upload it to the AI. Just add it like an attachment to an email. Say, look at this homework. I'm trying to help my child, and I'm struggling to help her with question 4. I don't know how to explain it to her. What would you suggest? That kind of thing. You can be really clever at things like that, and it can be good at if you find the homework's too hard, but you can ask it to give you an alternative question that may be more manageable instead. But me and the school should be helping to give you more targeted work. But if you're really thinking, what else could I do? You can ask it for things like that. So yeah, it can be really helpful for things, just for that kind of stuff where there's a bit of difficulty, especially a lot of the curriculum is quite difficult. If you've not been in school for years, as a parent, you might be thinking, I have no idea what that is. Could be doing a project on some element of geography or science, and you think, I don't know what that is. I can't help. But it could give you some assistance.
Another area that you've mentioned to me, and I want to make sure that I've understood it correctly, because we get a lot of parents who say, I've been given this information, that information, I've been told to read this policy, to read that procedure, to follow this, to follow that. I haven't got time to read all of this. I'm working, I'm parenting, things are difficult at the moment, my emotions are running high, and now they're asking me to wade through page to page to page of information in order to do what I need to do, and I just don't have the time to do it. And obviously, within adoption support, that's something that we offer, but you've said to me before that AI can help with that as well. So how would a parent ask AI to help them with that?
Well, like a policy?
A policy, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's imagine you've got a child who's struggling with their behaviour or their emotions, and the school's responding to that in a particular way. Maybe you're a bit concerned about the way the school's punishing your child, I don't know, for example, and you might think needs a bit more of a therapeutic approach or something. I don't know. That's the kind of thing we often find, isn't it? So you could, as a parent, download the behaviour policy off the school's website. You're not going to want to read it all, but you can just upload it into your choice of AI. I can attach like an email attachment, because there's always a plus sign or something like that. You can just click on the plus and then add the thing you want to look at and say, this is the behaviour policy for my child's school. He was excluded for 3 days because of da da da. Can you just check if this is in line with the policy?
Wow.
And it will go. It'll read the policy and say, yeah. It'll say, yeah, that was following in line with policy. Or it might say, no, they should have done this, or it wasn't done. Or it might ask you questions. It might ask you a question that it might say, this could be true, it could have been appropriate, but I need to know a bit more about what happened first. And then you might say, well, did they? So you can say, well, they did this, and they gave you a warning, whatever. So you can have that almost like I say, the conversation with, as if it was a personal assistant who knows that policy. Tell me about this policy,
And you can also ask it to summarise as well, can't you? So if you upload something and you say, can you summarise this for me, then you might be able to get 10 pages down to 1 page or something, and get an overview.
What are the main? Yeah, tell me them. Just look at this and document and tell me what the main points are. And you can, if you want to, you can say, I want the maximum of 10 things. Or you could say a maximum of 300 words or something like that. Depending on what your summary is, because the summary could be 3 pages long, but that even might be too long. But you might say, I want it in bullet points. Give me 10 bullet points that summarize the main points from this document. Off you go, and it will try. Now it will, of course, the machine's doing its best to decide what the main points are. You might think something else was more important than the machine does. There's a risk, isn't there, that it might miss something that's important. But on the whole, that's a pretty good shortcut to get to something. And
potentially better than just, finding ourselves under time pressure and being like, I'm not ready to talk. If your option is that, then having AI generated 10 key points might not necessarily be in line with your 10 key points, but it's better than not having access to stuff.
It'll give you something.
Really impressive.
Yeah, it can be quite helpful for a lot of things. Help you to sort of reject stuff if you're just trying to look at. I mean, from a university point of view, I'm thinking of that. It might say to a student, you can ask it to look at a paper, just to summarize that paper and tell you whether, and then you can decide if it's actually going to be relevant to your piece of work. And if the summary can go, it can tell you what you need to know. Think, actually, that's perfect. I'll go and read it and use it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it looks like it's irrelevant, you can just reject it. But that will probably save you hours of reading something and then realizing you don't need it.
Yeah. I'm really impressed.
So yes, for complicated documents that you might be involved with, so maybe a child with SEN, it could be helpful. There's a big, important flag I would like to wave here. There's a red flag, which is for any parent and anyone actually working with children, let's say, including adoption support workers, do not upload personal details into your AI. So if you, let's say you're looking at an EHCP or some medical information about, I don't know, something that includes personal details about your child, like date of birth and name, it will go into there. It'll be fed. You're feeding it into the machine, the AI, and it won't, you can't get it back.
So something generic like a school policy that is on their website and is accessible to everyone, doesn't contain anyone's personal details, that could be fed in as it is.
Because that's public information anyway.
But things that contain personal information, we would remove that personal information first.
Yes,
and
definitely.
ensure that we are 100% happy with whatever we're uploading being kept there forever.
Yes.
And
so if you had a document, if it was as a parent relating to your child and a report, I don't know, a draft report of something that someone had produced, now you I don't know, you might want to ask it some questions, but you could just copy and paste the bits, the statements that relate to your child into a separate, let's say, Word document instead, without all the names and details and address, and then maybe just ask Word to find and replace, because it's quite good. Most people probably know how to do that, I guess. You just go edit, find, replace, so find name, Caroline, replace with X, capital Y and Z or whatever, and then it just takes child's name out. I mean, as it happens, the child's first name, if it's used throughout, doesn't really reveal who it is because it doesn't say anything else about the child. But if you really want it completely anonymous, you just have child Z or X or something, from that point of view. But
so does that mean then that you couldn't use it for help with things like EHCPs or?
Oh no, absolutely you can. This is one of the things that I really found as a bit of a light bulb moment, because I was working with, I was helping a friend who's another foster parent like me, and she'd been asked to fill in the parent response for an EHCP application. She said, look, you've worked in schools, can you help? I said, yeah, of course. So we sat down together, started looking at the form in each section, and she started writing down what the girl struggles with in various aspects, and trying to find the language, because if you get the language right, it really helps the application, because then the panel will be able to get a clearer picture of your child's needs. But it's not easy to write it in that way and to be clear about it. And parents aren't. That's not, unless you're a teacher or something, you're not really going to live in that world, are you? So you can sometimes undersell or understate things that your child actually struggles with, or can do for that matter. But that would potentially make the application less strong than it could be. So we started looking at, one section, I think it was about social emotional behavioural development. And we were trying to think of the difficulties that she has. And I was saying, right, and the parent was sort of struggling a little bit. Said, well, she finds this a bit hard, finds that a bit hard. I said, what does that look like? When you say hard, when you find it hard, what do you mean? So what does she do when that's hard? And we're trying to pull out the actual behaviours that you see. How often does it happen? Okay. But then we were struggling, both of us were actually struggling to think of other difficulties that she might experience that come under that term, social emotional behaviour. So I just said, let's just see what the AI can tell me. So I just put in the AI. I'm trying to help a parent of a child in year. I'm not sure the year group matters, but anyway, in let's say year 8, try to complete an EHCP application. We are looking at the social emotional behaviour section. What kind of difficulties might a child display under this section, on this category of need? And I just went, off you go, and it just came back within seconds with a massive list of loads and loads of potential behaviours that you might see for a child who's struggling with those issues. Now, that made it much easier. Suddenly we could just go through this list and go, is that one of them? Does that one of them? Does she do this? Does she do this? Some of them, obviously lots of them were not relevant, but quite a few of them were, oh yeah, that's something she does actually. Forgot about that. She does that. Yes, let's put that in. She does this thing. Okay. I mean, it just gave us immediately a big head start. And so then we said, well, let's think about the other categories of need, because there's obviously 4 categories of SEN. We knew that social and emotional was the main. What about others? Cognition and learning? Well, I don't know. And sometimes, a parent wasn't quite sure whether she really had needs in that area. So I said, let's do the same thing again. So I just said, now can you? It's the same, the same chat. So I just said, now please can you do the same for cognition and learning? What difficulties might a child experience? I think it's probably useful to say the year at that age, because obviously if it's a 4-year-old child can have very different difficulties to a 12-year-old. And it just produced this long list again. And suddenly she went, oh, actually, yeah, there's a few things there that she does struggle with, and I hadn't thought about it. I didn't think it was important, but so then we ended up filling in quite a lot into a couple of areas of need that we hadn't considered, and even sensory and physical there were some areas there that emerged from the discussion, because it came up with some list of potential difficulties. Now, you're not trying to find difficulties for the sake of it,
No.
but it just meant that we ended up with a truer picture of actually what this girl does struggle with. And it became obvious that, yes, she has main difficulties in this area, but actually some difficulties in 2 other areas too. And I thought, wow, that would have taken both of us a good few hours. Bear in mind, I've got some experience in school, so goodness knows how you would manage on your own if you don't know much about education and relying on everyone else to make sure they record everything properly. So I just thought, God, if only other people knew that. It was not difficult just to put in open up your ChatGPT or whatever. I've not really revealed any confidential information. I didn't ask it anything complicated. Just, I'm doing an application for EHCP. I need some help with some, thinking about potential areas of difficulty and describing them. This is what you'd say to a helper, isn't it? If you had a person on the other end of the phone, if you're emailing them if you have someone on the end of a chat thing, this is what you'd say to them. I've got access to an expert here. What would you suggest I could put? What difficulties might she experience in this category of need? Please check, and see what it comes up with.
I really like that example, and you have shared it with me before. And my one foray into using AI was to do something similar for one of the families I was supporting. But I really like it because it still shows the fact that I have this like deep-seated thing: is using AI cheating? Is it cheating? But it's not. I'm asking it to give me information, but I'm still choosing what to do with that information, and I'm not lying. I'm not going to say that a child struggles with this when they don't, or I'm not going looking for anything like that. But I'm asking it to give me prompts so that I do the best job I can, and I don't miss anything out. And that is something I think that it could be really helpful for. And just, I know this isn't education related, but I'm thinking, I've supported families with a couple of DLA applications recently, disability living application. And I'm like, perhaps I could have used it to help me write the statement on there, because they were quite hard to write as well. Hard to know what to say, what not to say, and perhaps the same kind of approach for other applications to support our children could really take a load off parents. A job that would take hours and hours and hours could actually just be made a lot easier by using your personal assistant.
I thought that would really, I can imagine that being quite helpful. And I think another example is where use it for, I'm trying to think of some other things I've done with it.
Something else I've been thinking about, Jason. I know we've done a podcast on this, but parents often have to go into schools to have meetings with staff, and that could be quite anxiety inducing, can't it? Like, what questions do you ask? What should you be expecting? All of that kind of thing. Can AI be used to support parents in preparation for a meeting at school?
Yeah, definitely. You could say, again, just tell the AI, I'm going to have a meeting with my child's school. I'm experiencing some difficulties. You give as much information as you think it needs to know, as if it was like a personal assistant. I would like, can you help me to think of some questions I can ask the people in the meeting to help me get some clarification on a few matters. It may be that it'll come back at you with some further questions like, well, sure, it'll say, yeah, of course I can help you, but what kind of things do you want to know about? What difficulties have you experienced? So you might want to explore it with you a bit more before it comes up with some suggestions. Or it might give you a set of questions that you initially think, oh, that's not quite what I want. You just have to say, oh, that's not quite what I want, actually. Can you think about? So respond to it back in a kind of natural way, like you would to a person. Give it some feedback. So those questions aren't quite what I was looking for. I need something more specific related to X, Y, Z.
That in itself is quite interesting, because we often talk to other people to get a clear idea of what it is that we're thinking ourselves. You're something like you often, through other people's questions, get a clear idea of perhaps what you want out of that meeting. And if you don't have that person to talk to, or you're a bit pushed for time, you can use AI to help you with that kind of filtering and focusing process. The questions that it asks you with your broad first entry will help you to clarify your own understanding anyway. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I've looked at recently as well for a referral I've had, which is around a child who's an exclusion. So I just thought ahead of today's podcast, what would I do? So I'm going to read it to you now. I went into Claude and I went, I'm supporting some adoptive parents. I've made this up here. Their year 8 child is being permanently excluded. What legal duties apply in this case in terms of the next step in education? The child might not be able to manage it in another mainstream school. Because I think what some people find hard here is what's the law? What do I do now? Who's responsible? And within that it came, I understand you're responding, you're helping these parents. Let me search for some information. Let me search for this. Let me search for this. It's talked about, it is looking for the law. Then it started looking at Adoption Support Fund. Then it went to alternative provisions and said, based on the research, here's what you need to know. And it came with legal duties with 3 recommendations. It says, after a permanent exclusion, the local authority, not the school, becomes legally responsible for arranging suitable full-time education for the child, starting from the 6th day after the school exclusion. Gives me a link to some evidence if I want to check that out.
That's really good, because we do
Really good,
hear
isn't it?
from parents who feel that they're a bit adrift, that neither the school or the local authority are kind of taking the lead, after a period of exclusion. Like, neither are kind of actually telling the parents what they need to do and what they're entitled to and who should be doing what for the school. So actually using AI to find out what your family's rights are and who you should be pressuring, that's
It says legal duties, then it says alternative provision options. That might not be appropriate for you in that case. We just came with pupil reveal units and review of SEN support, but they're kind of things that you might dismiss because they're not relevant to you, but it's coming with something. I didn't give it a lot of information to base this on, to be fair. I could have told it PRUs have been considered before and disregard it or whatever, but I gave it very little, so it's doing its best, I suppose. Rights to challenge the exclusion was another subheading it's come up with, like a governor's meeting. The parents have a right to attend a meeting with the school governors. Discrimination claims. If you believe the exclusion amounts to disability discrimination, you can make a claim through this route. There's a strict limit of 6 months. Again, it gives you a link then to what that law might be if you want to know more. So it just gives you potential. And then it came up with some potential. It says particular concerns for adopted children. Research shows that adopted children are overrepresented in exclusion statistics, and off it goes and tells you some stuff. I didn't ask it for this, but it clearly thinks it might be useful.
Yeah.
They said next steps recommendations. At the bottom it says, after those next steps, like request a need assessment of special needs, contact the local authority, think about Adoption Support Fund.
It's a very thorough personal assistant, isn't it? It's not a personal assistant that's just doing the bare minimum. It's the one that's kind of going to give you everything that you could possibly need.
It's programmed to try and be as helpful as it can.
Yeah.
And it says, would you like, at the bottom, would you like more specific information about any particular aspects of this situation? For example, the process of challenging the exclusion or accessing Adoption Support Fund or finding suitable alternative provision. I could ask it something else if I want to, but.
And I really like the fact that you shared there that it links you to evidence sometimes, because we have said, don't always, but we have said that, it's only as accurate as the information that's kind of in there, and there is the possibility that I'm talking about AI as if it's a person, but there is a possibility that it may have inadvertently, accidentally linked to things it shouldn't have been linked. But at least if sometimes it's giving you some evidence that you can choose to look at, if you are choosing to make a strong point, you can go and have a look at that, can't you, and kind of think, well, is this accurate? Is this what's been, what was meant? So that's made me feel a lot more comfortable.
I think one caution I would say though is be careful that I wouldn't want to be going down the road of using AI just to generate formal sounding letters that I fire off to schools immediately that I'm worried about something, because it might just come across as a bit unneedlessly over the top, disproportionate. So you would say, because you can be very angry about a situation, can't you? But you could just say, I want a formal letter to the school complaining about this, and it will produce a very formal sounding letter that sounds quite
But you
But it may
said
not be the
before,
way.
we cannot think that AI is going to take the place of humans because relationship and connection is so important. And we've mentioned on this podcast
Yeah.
before, and I'll say it again, we do need to be working in partnership with all the people that are surrounding our child, be that the teachers, be that the local authority, like whoever it is, we should work in partnership. And for the most part, the best way to do that is to have a collaborative and
Yeah,
cooperative
of course.
relationship. Obviously, there is a time when you need to draw a line, you need to be firm, you need to stand a bit stronger and shout a bit louder and perhaps be more formal. But that's never the first one, is it?
No.
Because we want to
No.
keep that relationship as positive as we can for as long as possible. And so, yeah, we could use AI to get that information and then use our own critical thinking skills to think about, how do I put this across
Yeah.
in a way that's going to get me
Yeah.
the result that I want, which is then to do something for my child.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So there are there's many more uses that parents could probably think of that we haven't thought of today, but they're just a few examples. But I do think it's got a lot of potential in some cases to save a bit of time and a bit of aggro.
So we've already started to touch on this really when we've mentioned anonymising information, making sure there's nothing personal there. But how can parents and schools make sure that children are using AI safely and that parents are using it safely?
Well, I suppose it's the same approach that you apply to any kind of technology use. So children with mobile phones and stuff, having the right parental controls in place. So things like those Google Suites and Apple stuff, there are various things you can use that enable you to monitor what your children are accessing and writing and so on. I think that same thing applies to AI. Again, as I said before, it doesn't allow you to start writing inappropriate stuff anyway. It just doesn't engage with that kind of material. So I think that's probably fairly reassuring. But nevertheless, you'd want to make sure they're not over relying on it and spending too long on it.
And
So
schools, just to add in there, schools also, any kind of computer, laptop, tablet that is owned by the school will have those on, because I can remember working in a sixth form college, and if you type certain things in on the computer, you got a visit from the pastoral lead. And I got a visit once as a teacher because I typed in about gambling, and I was actually planning a statistics lesson. So I needed information, very much information about some gambling and certain kind of odds. But the system had flagged me as a teacher, so I just wanted to reassure parents that that they can obviously take responsibility for home devices, but the school devices will all
yeah,
have
of course.
software on that will look out for keywords, key phrases, and trying to access things that are inappropriate and type in things that are inappropriate.
Yeah. Just help them to understand that it can get it wrong, and it's hard to think of an example, but yeah, it does make mistakes. So just being aware of that and just working alongside them to show them what it can do, where its limitations lie.
But I think
It's really bad at making jokes. If you ask it to AI to give you a joke, it just doesn't understand humor. Why would it? So it tries to generate something and it's poor. It's worse than a cracker
And
joke.
it's not
So
funny.
that might give an example of how its limitations are.
But that's quite interesting, because we would talk to children, wouldn't we, about not everything you see online is true. Not everyone you meet online is telling you the truth. And it's kind of just broadening that same message to AI, isn't it? We
Yeah,
can't
because
assume it's true just because it's there, and we've got to
Mm-hmm.
still be thinking about it.
especially when you think about AI generated images and videos that you can see now.
Yeah.
They're quite realistic looking, but
Yeah.
they're fake. But yeah, so they need to know that that's what it can do, but it is also not real. But other than that, I think I'd say just go for it. I think it's got a lot of potential anyway. So yeah, in general, I'm in favour of it. I'd say, but with all that, as long as you just keep your eyes open, critical mind.
No, thank you both. It's been really helpful. And I'm sure that we'll revisit AI again in a future podcast as it develops.
I also would like to say that if anyone listening to this has also got any further ideas of how it could be used to support parents, or perhaps someone's done it themselves, can you please share it? Because just email us, unless I am still in my infancy about thinking how to use it. And if there's an obvious way to use it that we've not covered, then please do let us know, and we'll try and share that with as many parents as we can.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks to Lisa and Jason for exploring AI with us and its growing role in our homes, schools, and children's lives. We hope this episode gave you a clearer picture of how our AI can support your child's education, what to watch out for, and how to approach AI with curiosity and caution. Keep asking questions, stay informed, and most importantly, keep those conversations going with your children. Thanks for listening. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, or leave us a review. If you fancy joining us on the podcast to share your experiences, or there's a topic you want us to cover, just drop us an email. You can contact us using the email address podcast@adoption-focus.org.uk.